Welcome to MMA Fan. My name is Luke Payson. Welcome back to all of those who are current subscribers of the show. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the show so that you can see more interviews. Like with the guest that's coming up right now, he holds one of the records. I think Ethan the Wolverine Goss and my current um, guest, Justin the General Patton, are probably the two most often guests of the show. So welcome back, Justin the General Patton, after a massive main event, professional 145-pound featherweight win for 247 Fighting Championships at their close end of the year last event of 2023, which was Brawl in the Burgh 19 at the Monroeville Convention Center. Welcome on the show, General.
What's up, bro? How you doing?
Great seeing you. Just a pretty fantastic night and evening for you. I've already done an interview, and if you haven't already seen it, please check it out with your lady friend, Carly Jo Thomas. Got to interview her, and pretty exciting that you guys both had fights, both had big wins on the card last night. Before we get to your fight, kind of the obvious question. I was backstage running around doing a couple different fun things last night. I could see you warming up and then peeking out between the curtains to catch. I mean, there were so many Matt Factory people on the card. So many. How was that like for you? I know you focused, but were you able to kind of check in? And what was it like checking in on any of the fights, particularly then also with Carly? How did that all get? How did that all go balance wise before you ever even got in there for yourself?
I kind of figured this out like early when I fought on with different teammates on the same card. I realized that whatever they do doesn't affect my performance. I realized that actually when Craig Perry broke his arm.
Yeah. Wow.
Craig snapped his arm and I was like, well, that's how she goes sometimes, you know what I mean? It's like that doesn't I love Craig to death, don't get me wrong, but that doesn't affect me and my performance. You know, I still have to go out there and do my job, you know what I mean? So it's Isaac likes to call it tunnel vision. You just got tunnel vision. You're focused on what you have to be focused on. Nothing else really matters, you know. Even when I seen Carly fought that Wendy chick and Carly kicked her real good, but Carly got her back taken and got choken out. Isaac came up to me right after and it was tunnel vision, and I was right on point again, ready for to do my job. You know what I mean? So it it's tough to watch. Like I talked to Ethan Goss about it, and he doesn't like to watch his teammates fight. I'll peek out occasionally, but I can't go out there and stand out there. I can't walk out with them. But I'll look and then occasionally look away, look away. You know what I mean? I'm still rooting for them. I'm in their corner, but I still have to focus on the task that I have at hand. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. And it's great. You mentioned um, Coach Isaac Greeley, who's an absolute legend, one of the best coaches around, not just Pittsburgh, but like nationally. And that factor, and of course, that also goes for many of the other local coaches. A lot of great gyms
In the
represented. But
world.
yeah, of course, the mental game that's so important. Um, and it does make a difference. You are at the point where you're going to be fighting later on. You and Ethan are either main event or co-main event pretty much every time you guys fight. Oftentimes, when you fight together, I think you're still perfect when you guys fight on the same card. I think that's still a thing. You weren't able to fight last card. Ethan was on the card, won double champ status. And of course, you won
Yeah.
tonight. He was on commentary booth. But I think it's really good that you have that mindset now because you are going to fight last or second to last in pretty much every event you do. And so it's good that you have that mindset. And also, as a follow-up to the Craig Berry example, thankfully he's fully recovered and put on an impressive couple wins himself and is now like back on track. But yeah, that was obviously quite a big injury. Pretty pretty exciting night overall. I'm assuming you didn't get to fully see Carly Joe's fight. That was a very close back and forth fight. She showed a lot of skills and got a great win herself. But now to let's get to your fight. Main event against Jacob Alave. He was 3-1 coming in, and in many ways, I was thinking when I was watching the fight, he and I think this could be a compliment. He was kind of a mirror to you, a taller, longer guy, really nice, smooth striking, really likes to move a lot. Obviously, a good record as a pro, 3-1. You were coming in to fight 4-3, more pro experience, but still, I mean, you've said it over and over again. You want to fight people that have good records, that have a lot of skill and talent. So let's talk about the first round. Did you feel like there was any feeling out process for you before you started going to your game plan, and then just kind of talk us through what your experience was round to round?
Yeah, I started engaging and just getting like my position on him, and I could tell he was frustrated because I wasn't rushing. And he a couple times during the first before I shot, he was looking at me like, "What are you doing?" Like, I'm waiting for you to, make your move and make your mistake. I don't have to go. I can just keep creeping my way in until you give me that moment. You know what I mean? And I feel like that patience paid off. I wasn't really rushing anything last night. And I mean, he kicked me one time on the inside of my leg, and I didn't like it too much. So I was like, "Yeah, we're shooting now." Like I didn't like that too much. So and then we mixed it up, and then it paid off. You know what I mean? Um, but I was surprised on how tall he was at weigh-ins. I didn't think he was gonna be that tall. I stood up next to him, and he's like, "You're taller than I thought." I'm like, "Dude, you're taller than I thought." He was a cool dude. He was no hard feelings at all. Like before the fight, he came up to me and he's like, "I pray to God both of us make it out of this without injuries." Like, I respect that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's a different level of respect and faith. Like, I truly appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah, and that's also the spot that's really important. I mean, you and your opponent both a lot of good respect, faithful guys, man of faith. But the other thing is, this is a sport. When people look at fighting, combat in this case, unarmed uh, fist fighting combat, it is a sport. The intention, if it's not a sport, if it's a bar fight or a street fight or there's weapons involved, is not for both people to make it out safe, right? Now, that's not the intention in those environments. And I think it is good that, when your opponent kind of told you that, but like it's a sport, just like I watch football and it's a bummer when somebody shreds their ACL. That's not the
Yeah.
goal. The goal is maybe a hard tackle, a big stop, but the goal isn't to break somebody's neck or to give permanent damage to somebody. It's sometimes it can happen, unfortunately, because of what the nature of the contact is. But I think that's the same thing in fighting. There are aspects. We saw a couple people get knocked out on the card, and even though it looks super violent, and it is, a lot of people recover just fine after one knockout. If
Yeah.
you kept pounding them for the next hour, that would be a completely different story. But yeah, so,
Yeah,
so I think
exactly.
sometimes people don't see that. Now, um, great point. I got to interview, of course, I said in the intro that you and Ethan, the Wolverine Goss, has been on the show a bunch. I mean, you had have been on the show more than 15 times, I'd say. I have to go back and
Yeah,
check,
for
but
sure.
a lot.
Definitely.
But Jacob came on the show before to preview the fight, which I always try to interview both sides. And he was saying, and I think you basically said that's what happened. He was basically saying that he likes to be a reactionary fighter, which is kind of what you were pointing out, that you could kind of tell he was waiting for you to crash in. And that works great unless he comes across somebody like you that just had a little bit more polish, a lot better of a game plan going into that fight. Not that he didn't, of course, have some of his moments, but I also give Olave, your opponent, credit because at his level of coming up, just like you, being able to find timing and catch openings is the name of the game.
Mhm.
You are a step ahead in most of the phases yesterday, but that's just the way the game goes. It was really cool to see two very intelligent fighters. At which point did you realize you got us through about halfway of the first round? At which point did you realize that you guys had similar game plans? Yours was just more effective and working better.
When I was countering most of his stuff, like he'd throw one thing and I'd counter him with like
Yeah.
two or three.
Yes,
And
you
I was
are.
like, I got your number now, you know what I mean? And then he started to get like not reckless, but he'd start throwing with more intention, trying to hit me with that one thing, and then I'd see it more, and then I'm not gonna be there. Like I'm not gonna sit there and take a shot that you're throwing 100%. You know what I mean? Like if you're setting it up, you might catch me, but if you're throwing something hard and I see it and it's telegraphed, why would I stand there? Like you know what I mean? So I'm at least gonna step off a little bit to take a little heat off of it, so I can come back with a couple shots. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
I was just
I
trying
have
to
to
answer
rewatch.
everything he did.
I have to rewatch the broadcast. But there were some, and for people that have the 247 live app or want to pay for the pay-per-view, some of your combos, like, and I know you were just flowing, you mentioned 2, 3, 4 combos. Some of the combos had two kicks, one in the beginning, one in the end, set, which is great. several different punch. And I think some of the combos got up into the 4, 5, and even 6. But what I'd encourage people to do that want to either training, if you're just hitting a heavy bag, you should be training combos that are real life specific, that work, that flow, that move the hips, that use the arms, that reset, that have functional things that are not just stationary. And I think you'll be impressed, if you get a chance. Obviously, when you relook at it, a lot of that flow state that you got into, you ended up coming up with combos that obviously worked very effectively, that you didn't like plan out ahead. You just you felt them as you went, which is just really, really great. And yes, I started noticing that pretty soon, that Olave's didn't really, and that comes down to your defense and movement too. He never really got multiple combos. I think there was 1 or 2 times he might have had a 2-punch combo, but compared to you, he was more of a single shooter versus you flowing. Now, in about halfway through or whatever it was in the first round, you had one of your first of many sort of back takedowns where you didn't do a traditional wrestling shot. You shot in, kind of turned past his hip, got your head on his back, and then went with the hand over hand sort of like body control lock or whatever. What you did those over and over again throughout the night, and then of course you would trip and work from takedown from there. To me, given the disappointing outcome of your last fight where you were dominating for 2 rounds, looking the best you ever had. Of course, you looked better last night, but you got your neck out there and it got taken in a guillotine. It looked like you were very aware of that. And this new wrinkle to your plan really looked like it was flawless. The number of times you were on his back and he couldn't break the grip and you were controlling him was just incredible.
Yeah, I'm not trying to put my head underneath people anymore.
Yeah. No.
That's what happened last time. I was lazy wrestling up. I was in a bad spot. I just thought I could force my way up. I started to force my way up. He caught my head. So if you don't put your head down there, and Isaac Greeley always says it from Coach Pat Bakura from Pitt. The sin is not being there; it's staying there. So if my head goes down there, it can be down there, but it can't stay down there. If it stays down there, that's when I'm gonna get caught. That's when I'm gonna get in bad positions where I have to wrestle my way out or recover my way out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a great quote because in whether it's sports or life in general, things happen. We do make mistakes. We are human. There's times that we do put ourselves, whether it's in personal life or in sports, in a bad position. But I agree. It's well, are you making it a habit? And a lot of times, particularly in fights, they are habitual problems. Whether it's hand sloppiness, whether it's there's dozens of things, whether it's leaving your neck out. There's so many things that become habitual. And I think that's really good. A great discipline is, making the corrections when there are mistakes. Which I think, if I remember, there might have been one time where he had just the beginning of a guillotine. I think he was
I
in the
started
first.
coming up.
I think it was in the first round.
Yeah.
I don't think he got anywhere close to it in the rest of the fight. What was that? I mean, obviously you transitioned out of it very quickly. What was that like second or two like? Because obviously you're dealing coming in, you got to let that fight behind you, but it's tough when you to focus on the fight in front of you when you came off that disappointing loss. So what was those couple seconds like for you when he
I
tried to guillotine? It wasn't that tight.
He had my chin,
Yeah.
and I think I came up on a single leg or something, but I started driving up
Mhm.
rather than into him, because if I drive into him, I might end up underneath him. So I try to come up with him to make sure that he at least can't get his chest over the back of my head. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that was really good. And I mean, you had a lot of incredible. You had a lot of incredible moments. I was telling you after the fight, but I think it's fun to point out now that you really had such a variety of kicks, and you started showing that in the Zimic fight. I know you've always been talented, but really it was the Zimic fight, and then this fight that really just raised the level. Your jab on point, your multiple 4-5-6 combos, your multiple push, everything from teeps or push kicks to all the different types of Muay Thai kicks to, like I mentioned, multiple kicks in the same combo, which I always give credit to Cowboy Cerrone. I'm sure there was other people that use it, but that really flow where you're transitioning hips and you're not stagnant. But I was able to see sitting cage side that you were reading him up on both legs, inside and outside, and also one side of his chest because of your power kicks. How much were you aware of you damaging him from your strikes throughout the fight? Because they seemed apparent to me, but I wasn't in a fight.
I could tell. I mean, I could tell he didn't like him.
Yeah.
I wasn't, I didn't think any of them were, like, crippling,
Yeah.
but they were definitely adding up to his movement not being as well. I could tell I kicked him a couple times and he'd switch because he didn't like it, you know what I mean? And
Sure.
he could have been switching in his head to set up that left kick that he was doing, because a lot of Muay Thai dudes do that. They switch left to throw a hard, rear left kick. But either way, I'd kick him and he'd switch, and "Oh, you didn't like that," you know what I mean? So, I could tell they were adding up. At the end, I was kinda trying to hit his body a little more because he seemed like he was slowing down, and I just wanted to, like, give him a little extra, like, "Don't even come in here," you know what I mean? "Don't even come
Yeah.
in my space, I'm gonna hit you."
Well, and
So
he had some dynamic weapons that he tried on you. The jumping knee, which of course, all talent to Olave had that landed flush. It would have changed potentially a
it
fight. So
would
you know
change my
foot
life.
skills. Yeah, it probably would have. Um, but obviously, like a big part of fighting is enacting your game plan, so the other person's game plan never gets going. He clearly had a lot of skills, but like to your point, as the clock's winding down, you realize, hey, let me start throwing strikes that are going to keep him away because he obviously has some weapons that you don't really want to eat. Um,
Yeah.
while I'm talking to you, you're way under a day removed because I think you stopped fighting around 10 o'clock last night, and this is early afternoon. You did obviously get some nicks and bumps on your body. Some things got through. You also have which we were joking about, you have very prominent facial features, which kind of
Right.
take the damage. Do you remember any strike landing, particularly that cut that you got? How worried? I think it, hit you right there. We can kind of see where the stitches are.
Yeah.
How worried were you about that? And talk a little bit about how grateful you are to have a designated cut man. They had a designated cut man in each corner, which
Yeah,
is
Derek, Gianta did a very good job of, making sure I wasn't leaking anymore and getting it all, um, stopping it from bleeding and stuffing it with, petroleum and stuff. We clashed heads at the
uh,
first round. There was probably like a minute left, and you can tell when you get cut, it's like a weird feeling. And then we hit heads, and then I touch and I see my blood, and I'm like, sweet,
yeah.
like nice. And I was just hoping that it wasn't stoppage worthy, you know what I mean? And then from there on, I was just trying to keep it from getting hit again, you know? He
Right.
hit my eye instead, so that's all right.
Well, it is interesting for people that don't know. There's a danger zone in getting cut, and general space shows where you don't want to get cut, which is anything above the
Yeah.
eyes, because up in the ear down, because if it can't be controlled and if the blood's leaking into your eyes, they'll give you a couple times to get it under control with the cut man. And of course, you only needed one. You got it under control at the first break, so it was all positive. But those could be very fight changing and sometimes fight ending. Where if you ever watch any MMA and there's cuts below, which will sometimes happen in this part, cuts up. A lot of times they'll just let them, just let them kind of go. They might do a
Yeah.
little bit, but they're not really as concerned as the one up there. But fortunately, it didn't seem to ever widen. Like sometimes you mentioned about protecting. A lot of times what will happen is there'll be a split, whether it be from an elbow or in this case a head, usually bone on bone, shin, something even harder than glove. It's usually some bone splits you open. But then what will happen, and we've seen it in big fights, if somebody's able to land on it 2, 3, 4 more times, that's where it really starts to kind of rupture more and more. Unfortunately, that never happened. So I don't know where we are in the play-by-play. I think maybe second or third round. There seemed to be a point where the first round, we mentioned that you had that little guillotine, but it seemed like for the rest of the fight, you weren't in any specific danger other than, of course, the striking. You guys were going back and forth on striking. He clearly had some weapons, but you were dominating the output as well as you continue to take the back, trips, body lock. Sometimes he'd try to get away from you. You'd kind of like walk with him, a lot of control. It was really great. Uh, the decision ended up being 30-27 with two judges and one judge giving one round, which I think you and I both don't really see that, but that's where that's where the judges, have their own criteria. Sometimes it's confusing. But without going
Haters.
into that, what's it like? I mean, you got a massively unanimous decision, and I would say it really ideally was a 30-27. I think if you rewatch the fight, that's what that fight is, a 30-27. You didn't have times where you were pounded on him and ground and pound for 3 minutes where it would have been a 10-8. I mean, it was definitely 10-9s, I would say, by the way the scoring criteria is. But what does it feel like to get a really dominant 30-27 winning all rounds decision? I mean, that's a big deal coming coming into a fight where your opponent has a lot of skills and is really on quite a roll as a fighter?
I'm glad I just got to display my striking. Like when I spar with people, they know that I can strike. I just never really got to display it in a fight, and it felt like I was sparring yesterday. It just felt like another day on Saturday where I go and put my shin pads on, my gloves on, and talk to people, and we fight. You know what I mean? It felt good. I'm really starting to hit that flow state whenever I want now. I even realized that we did a shakedown at 10:30, and I had I had Carly holding pads for me, and I was just punching and kicking her. She was so jacked. It was so funny. But I felt, dude, I
You
was
were
just
doing
calling
that
my
this,
shots.
you were doing that this morning, even with your tender shin.
No, no, no. Shakedown like Saturday before the fight.
Kidding. Well, okay. I thought, man, if you were kicking with that shin
No,
today,
I'm not.
no, thank you.
Let me
Yeah,
tell you, I'm not kicking anything for at least a week, if not
yeah. I was
more.
gonna say
My shin
you're.
hurts so bad.
We'll just say tender. It's tender.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right. It's a little sensitive.
it's a little sensitive.
Yeah.
And I got to see some cute family time. Your nephew was pulling your hair on your leg of your banged up leg. It's nothing like a little kid to not know
He's good.
kind of.
He'll get
Yeah,
thumped up for it.
yeah, he does. It's great having him in the cage, and obviously, best wishes to Jacob Olave going forward. He's got a lot of talent and skill, and I think this fight for him is going to be a big defining moment of his career, where he's going to have a lot of tape now to look at what you did to him, and I think he's the type of fighter that is going to want to develop into what you put on. He seems to have the skills to become the fighter that you were there that last night, just like 3-4 years ago you weren't putting on as well-rounded clinics as you are now. I mean, that's just part of the
Yeah.
fight. Let's talk about sort of the confidence you can now have with not only your skills, your talent, your training, your life purpose, all that, like your focus, but also just the ability to hit a flow state, uh, talk and be a little bit relaxed, but also very lethally intent too. Kind of like not so serious that you're stiff, but not so relaxed that you're not serious. Kind of that nice blend. How was that for you, and how do you think that sets you up going forward?
I feel like that's how I am. Like, ask anyone that I spar with, that you have on the podcast. I talk when we're sparring, you know what I mean? That's just how I am. People hate it, but it's like that's just me. I like to talk and go. If you hit me good, I'm like, that was nice, you know what I mean? I was doing it to him. He threw a jump knee, and it like almost landed, and then I tried it and I kind of messed it up. I'm like, all right, you got me there. You can do that. Mine wasn't as good, you know what I mean? And it was it's cool for real. I like it. That's more me. I'm not like that stiff, hard, like, you know what I mean? Like, don't get me wrong, I can go in there and bite the bullet. We can go at it, but I'm gonna have fun while I'm doing it. You know what I mean? So
Sure. Yeah.
it
And
is
it's just
more
nice.
me.
It's nice to see that development. I was had the honor of calling your last amateur fight, and then I've been around and called and been cage side for all your pro fights because they've all been with 247, which is just such a blessing for me. And I know the development of 247 to kind of raise you up as I would say the first main pro to go from amateur 247 to pro, and now have developed. I think that was your eighth pro fight. I mean, just tons of
Mm.
experience. It's really great. Yeah, eighth pro fight. Look, my math works. It's really great to see that development. Super excited. You and Carly get to go into Christmas week with a little bit more eye makeup, but with
All
big
right.
wins, being able to eat and not have to worry about your weight. A lot of really positive things. So this is kind of kicking off what will be some of the final interviews for MMA Fancast of 2023, because I'll be interviewing you and several other fighters from the card. But it's kind of fun to have a wrap up. And for you, what does it feel like wrapping up a year where there was some disappointments? Obviously, what does it feel like wrapping up 2023, particularly with such a big win?
It was needed for real. I told you after the fight, not that my confidence was lacking, but like I know I have it, but my biggest fear in this is being a local journeyman. I don't want to be that. I want to make sure that if I do go and end up failing, I want to fail at least the highest level. You know what I mean? I don't want to fail at a local. That's scary to me. I want to at least be able to put my talents and my blessings on display in front of the world. And it's scary to me be local minded. A lot of these people, a lot of these amateurs, a lot of these pros even are locally minded. They think that this is the end all, you know what I mean? And I'm not talking down on them, but they need to see that we were a drop in the bucket, and I want to be bigger, you know what I mean? And it takes a lot to get there, and a lot of people don't understand that. I'm
Sure.
finally it's finally clicking to me that it takes how much it takes and how much we got to do, and I'm getting the confidence that I can compete with these guys. I can do this, you know?
It makes perfect sense. That's really the mental side of the fight game, which is so important. You're now 5-3 as a pro. You've just had your 8th pro fight. Obviously, 2 more fights, you'll be at 10. And you're really at that point, 8 fights in, that you've shown a ton of skill. To be 5-3, obviously, none of those losses are fun, but you're really showing the best you have now. And I think that's a difference, to encourage anybody, that if you've got some losses that you don't particularly like, if you're better than you are when you got those losses, that's what matters. If you haven't improved since those losses, well, now there might be some real problems. But like, obviously for you, I think it was Ryan Kavanaugh in the wrap up 247 thing that they did was earlier today, was saying that if you had fought, if last night Justin the General Patton had fought any of your previous Justin the General Pattons, you would have beaten them. And of
I
course,
beat
that's
the
the goal,
shit out of me.
right? That's the goal. That's what he said. Yeah, that's the goal, right? And that's what you
Yeah,
want to be. So as
yeah.
you progress, particularly when your focus is to progress to higher levels and more, more of a world audience and stuff like that, you obviously want to look back and say, man, you're glad you got this big win against Jacob Alave, but hopefully the next fight, you'll look back and say, man, I would beat the crap out of the Justin who beat Alave. I mean, obviously that's where you want to be your next fight, 2, 3, 4 months from now. You want to be better than you were last night, which is saying something, because you're clearly developing your performance. So that's kind of all the game plan. 247 has announced the next 2 events in February and in April. And of course, I know a lot has to go into planning. So I just can't wait to have you back on before your next fight. But for now, always an honor, always a privilege talking to you, being your friend, having you on the show, and also doing stuff, not just for the video. It's really a real pleasure. So I appreciate
Yeah, I
you.
appreciate you, brother. I appreciate
Absolutely.
you, man.
God bless you. I appreciate how you use the mic
God
and
bless you.
your opportunity to encourage people to seek God. It's always a beautiful thing. I mean, part of me interviewing people afterwards is they get the mic, they get the opportunity to share. And I think, people use it whatever way they want. That's freedom of speech. It's really great the way you have been using it. So really appreciate you, and Merry Christmas and almost a Happy
Merry
New Year.
Christmas.
So
Yeah,
thanks
Merry
so much,
Christmas.
buddy. You
All
take
right, I'll
care.
see you, bro. Yeah, see
Hang
you.
on,
Thank
bud.
you.
You got it. You're welcome. Have a good one. Bye bye. Thank you.